Mr. President.
Senator from Kansas.
Mr. President, thank you. I rise today to seek the confirmation of retired Army Captain Sam Brown to be the Department of Veterans Affairs Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. President Trump nominated Captain Brown for this important position. Sam Brown demonstrates a history of service, love of country, and commitment to serving other veterans. A West Point graduate, Afghanistan combat veteran, husband, father of three, Captain Brown understands the sacrifices the men and women of the United States military and their families make every day, and is well qualified to undertake the significant responsibility of being the Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. The National Cemetery Administration's mission is to honor the memory of our nation's veterans by caring for their final resting places and providing services to their surviving loved ones. Captain Brown, if confirmed, will fill this position with the utmost respect, honoring and remembering those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. More than 4 million Americans are interred in NCA's 156 national cemeteries. Kansas is home to 3 of those cemeteries, where more than 62,000 Kansas veterans and their family members are buried. Another responsibility of the National Cemetery Administration is safeguarding the veterans' legacies by documenting their stories. In doing so, NCA helps make certain that no generation of Americans forget the sacrifices made for our freedoms. Mr. President, notwithstanding Rule 22, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to consideration of the following nomination. That the Senate vote on the nomination without intervening action or debate, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, and the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action. Sam Brown to be the Undersecretary of Veterans Affairs for Memorial Affairs.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. President. The chairman and I share a bipartisan commitment to putting our veterans first, including providing them with the kind of memorial and cemetery recognition that they have well earned. There is no difference between us on that point. And I think we also share a belief that members of the United States Senate have a duty, it's a constitutional duty, to hold accountable the executive branch and demand information from the executive branch to perform our obligations of oversight and scrutiny. I think we also share a respect for Sam Brown's service to our nation as a veteran, as a decorated veteran who has earned appreciation for his service. The kinds of qualifications he brings to this office are impressive, but this nominee was advanced out of committee by a 10-9 vote, so it's clear he does not have unanimous support. He said, when he was asked about whether he would support the Trump administration's plan to fire nearly 1/5 of the VA's workforce, including many who are veterans themselves. In fact, 1/3 of the VA's workforce are veterans. Quote, "We owe it to the Secretary in good faith to hear his full plan," which none of us have heard yet. And that's really the point. This issue is bigger than Sam Brown. It is about information that has been denied to our committee and to us as senators. The Secretary of the VA is actively working to undermine our bipartisan oversight efforts. Cuts have been made to contracts that deliver critical support and services to veterans. Despite multiple bipartisan requests, the Secretary refuses to share the list of canceled contracts. And thousands of VA employees have been bullied, driven off their jobs, or fired by Elon Musk and Secretary Collins. And there are plans to fire 83,000 employees. And we haven't seen those plans. All the Secretary has told us is that it is his goal, and he will accomplish that goal. He's denied us that basic information. And so I have said I'm opposing this nomination until we are given the information and disclosure we need to do our jobs. The Secretary has issued a pause on rulemaking that effectively halts efforts underway to provide veterans, including K-2 veterans suffering from radiation exposure, the benefits they desperately need, or PFAS victims, or other victims of toxic exposure. And he's refused to indicate when this so-called pause will be lifted, or whether it's permanent. Again, we have a job to do, and we have a right to demand. In fact, the Constitution requires that we make that demand. The VA must be transparent and accountable. Instead, the Secretary has come before our committee. He's dissembled, he's obfuscated, he's attacked anyone who questions him, and he denies us the basic information, denies the American people the information that he owes us. So my request is simple. If the President or my Republican colleagues believe that a certain nominee is a priority, come clean with the American people. Give us the information we need. What contracts have been canceled? Who's impacted by that action? What research has been stopped? Who has been fired and who will be fired? What is the plan? Address the unprecedented levels of obstructionism from this administration and give the American people, including our nation's veterans, the full and public debate they deserve. For these reasons, Mr. President, I object.
The objection is heard.
Mr. President, on the last Monday in May, less than 2 weeks away, we observe Memorial Day. As Americans, we gather at cemeteries and memorials worldwide to honor the courage and sacrifice and the legacy of men and women who served and are now in their final resting place. With the approach of Memorial Day, the United States Senate has a responsibility to honor the service members who died in service to our nation, and we can, in part, do so by confirming a qualified leader as the Undersecretary of Memorial Affairs, Captain Sam Brown. We can do that while we wait for other things to occur. These things are not mutually exclusive, and Captain Brown could begin to perform the duties of his office. I urged my colleagues to do so today. Those laying of our veterans to rest with honor, serving their families with dignity, it's not a Republican or a Democrat issue. And our committee has worked side by side over a long period of time in that manner. I'm discouraged that we cannot work in that manner today to confirm this qualified and capable leader for the National Cemetery Administration. He is responsible, that position is responsible for carrying out our nation's most solemn responsibilities in burying our veterans. It is incumbent upon us to confirm a nominee to lead the NCA and to lead it well, and I believe Captain Sam Brown would do just that. In his testimony before the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, Captain Brown shared his story of suffering with excruciating burns in the line of duty in Afghanistan. He recounted how, in the midst of his suffering and anguish, he heard his gunner shout the words, "Sir, I've got you," as he worked to extinguish the flames, ultimately saving Captain Brown's life. That declaration of rescue, that cry for support, that message of hope is the same message of hope that Sam Brown will take with him to the National Cemetery Administration. Under his leadership, NCA will be there to tell veterans' family members and loved ones, we've got you. The National Cemetery Administration puts veterans first. Sam Brown will put veterans first, and it was my hope that this body could come together to put veterans first today. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator from Connecticut.
Mr. President, I respect the points that my colleague from Kansas has just made as chairman, and we have worked together in a bipartisan way, and I hope we will continue to work together to make sure that the National Cemetery Administration is given the resources it needs and the personnel that are required to make sure this nation honors our veterans. As we speak, members of that workforce, the National Cemetery Administration, have been fired or are being fired or will be fired. Resources may be strangled. We deserve to know. We need to know to honor our veterans. That's the information we are demanding from this Secretary of the VA. I respect the assurances that Sam Brown will do his job, but when he was asked specifically at his hearing whether, if directed by the President to take action that would break the law, he responded that he could not, quote, imagine a scenario where the President would ask me to do anything unlawful, end quote. We know the President has asked members of this administration to do unlawful actions. But the main point is, bigger than Sam Brown, what are the resources that are being withheld in both workforce and dollars to expand our cemeteries as is required to make sure we provide places that honor our veterans? This basic information is an absolute prerequisite for us to do our job and assure that veterans are really honored on this Memorial Day and every day of the year. We owe our veterans that honor with action, every day, not just Memorial Day. And Americans who lay wreaths this Memorial Day are entitled to know what dollars, what commitments, what plans there are for our national cemeteries. We need and deserve that disclosure.